become mythic, the heat, that at this point, I don't even really know what it stems from. And I have to say this, and this is just my personal thing, I don't believe that it could really stem from this passionate issue you have. It can't stem from what he's done to the wrestling business. It can't just stem from what he's done to a business you love.
Yes, it is all from wrestling. But that's my problem. Wrestling was my life. Wrestling was what I enjoyed doing. Wrestling, I was a wrestling fan. I've considered myself lucky everything I got to do in wrestling. Every time I made an advancement, wow. It wasn't about the money. It wasn't about a career. It was about the wrestling business. When I was working full-time in wrestling on the road every day, if I had a couple of days off, I caught up on the wrestling tapes of all the territories that I would get tapes of that I wouldn't get a chance to watch. And he came to symbolize, besides the fact that he was just naturally annoying, because we couldn't be more polar opposites. I've said this before, if one of us was a black lesbian nun with, a paraplegic, we couldn't be more polar opposite, but it was about wrestling, because wrestling to me was, oh God. This guy from the South that carries a tennis racket. He's from New York and I'm from the South, and he's annoying and I'm not.
Put aside personal stuff like the JR and the Oklahoma. JR's a friend of yours. I understand losing your cool over that. You've got an anger issue.
I can't hear that voice.
It's fake.
I can't look at that face.
Why was Vince Russo the heavyweight champion?
He's become your arch nemesis. You're a comic book collector. This is almost like the give me, I don't know this stuff. Give me an arch nemesis, like Superman and Lex Luthor.
Well, no, Lex Luthor was intelligent and was was like really like an equal of a super villain that was of equal powers in some ways, but no. The way that Russo got his fucking spot on the creative team, he had sucked up, and he was a magazine editor. And can't even spell. He's a magazine editor, can't fucking spell, can't fucking write. But he was constantly pitching these ideas. And finally, they did a Raw. And I believe it was probably like February or March, early of '97. Somewhere around March, somebody confirm if I'm telling the truth on the date, where they did a taped Raw from Germany. It aired for 2 hours. It was lit horribly. It was a cold overseas tour card with no really even angle matches. It was just a series of matches shot with 1 or 2 cameras, badly lit with no stories, and then we voiced it over after the fact. And it was rotten, and I knew it was going to be rotten when they planned it, but they thought, oh, Raw will come from Germany. That'll be a big deal. No, it wasn't a big deal. It did like the worst rating in the history of fucking ratings. I don't know. And at that point, Vince, we had done the voiceovers live from the studio. That's another thing. We had to be at the studio from 9 to 11 o'clock on that Monday night to do live voiceovers to refer to things that happened in the news that day so people would know that our voices were live when we're obviously seeing tape from fucking Germany that's badly lit and poorly fucking shot. So anyway, nobody watched the thing. It fucking sucked. Bruce has left a message. Oh, Vince has called a meeting. Well, I come in fucking late, and they look at me like I had the turds hanging in my mouth, and Vince is fucking mad at everybody. He's mad at everybody for showing a fucking show that most people thought was going to suck to begin with if they told the fucking truth about it. And that's when Russo's like, I told you so. And that's what he said, well, this guy must know what he's talking about because he's the only one that wasn't involved in it. And that's when he started taking Vince Russo's ideas. I swear to God, Russo has even told his story from what I am told. Only he told it a little bit differently. But that's, yeah, so then he starts listening to Knucklehead because Knucklehead's like, oh, well, see all these phony cartoon characters like Honky Tonk Man and all this other shit. Well, that's the goddamn deal that I've been screaming. There's too many phony cartoon characters. So he has real life that goes into his insane bizarro world version of real life, and off we go in a different direction that's equally as maddening.
So you're literally in a meeting with Vince, and everybody's getting their ass chewed out, and kind of like the favorite in class. He says, "See, this is what," and right there, it's.
Well, he didn't say C, but basically it's C. Yeah, that's when Russo got influenced because Vince just got mad one day and went off in a 180-degree direction, as he does sometimes. That everybody else was the shits because this one show nobody fucking liked. That was the what's the opposite of apex? The low point, the lowest rating ever for a Raw, while the other guys were kicking ass. And instead of saying, okay, we shouldn't have shot an overseas show and put a bunch of cold matches with bad lighting and commentary done in the studio over the top of the tape on television and shot it as Raw. Vince McMahon decided, oh, goddamn, now we got to do something. Fuck all this shit. Vince Russo, you've been standing over here saying we don't have dogs fucking each other and transvestites and all this other shit, so come on over here. And Vince Russo, he would sit outside Vince McMahon's fucking office till 9 o'clock at night. He would blow off his kids' fucking softball games with these stacks of paper, and Vince McMahon was desperate because all of a sudden he's getting beat, and he never gets beat, and Nitro's beating him in the ratings instead of just having some good fucking wrestling with some good fucking wrestlers. Now he's got to reinvent the wheel. So the two of those fucking heads get together, talk about matter and antimatter, and then I was having to sit there in a room with the one guy who's the boss, who you can talk to when you get a chance, but whoever he's listening to at the time, he hears better. And I got this guy who I'm trying to explain what a fucking hammerlock is to, because Vince Russo, I was there the first night he was inside the rail. He was doing commentary for fucking WWF New York, because with that New York accent he's got, the people on Channel 9 were the only ones who could understand what the fuck he was saying. My ex one time was like, I don't understand a goddamn word he said. What the fuck's he saying? Anyway, to do it on camera, he sits inside the rail, and he's already on the creative team. And we're coming, he's at the desk right inside the rail, and he come back, he said, that was cool. I said, what? He said, being inside the rail for a match. He's writing the fucking show, and he's got a Woody because he was inside the guardrail for the first time ever while a wrestling match was going on. So I'm trying to deal with him, and I'm starting to get a fucking twitch because he knows nothing and he doesn't want to know anything, and he thinks he knows what he's fucking doing. And yes, okay, when we shoot an angle in November between The Undertaker and Kane, but they're not going to have a match until fucking March. Naturally, when Kane gets heat on The Undertaker the next week has to choke slam Kane through a fucking announcer's table. I said, okay, that's the middle of November, what are we going to do till the end of March? You fucking idiot. I was developing a fucking twitch. 1 month later, I was 280 pounds. When I went home for Thanksgiving 1997, I weighed 280 pounds. And I got home and I got on the scales. I said, I hate this fucking state. I hate this fucking job. I hate myself because I'm a big fat fuck. And all I do is sit in the house and eat because I'm miserable, because every time I leave the house, I want to fucking kill somebody. And a lot of that was due to sitting at least one day a week in Vince's house with him and Vince Russo, and having to coexist with Vince Russo at television. Because when it started out, when Russo was the editor of the magazine, and he was friends with Bruce Pritchard, and I would go to Bruce's house to allegedly work or really play with his dog during the day, but we were at the phone where the office could find us. Russo would come over, and their wives knew each other. And then when Russo got invited to join the creative team, first it was him and Bruce and me a lot of times. Then it was just, and sometimes JR would join, but sometimes it was just me, Vince Russo, and Vince McMahon. I even rode in the car with Vince Russo, some of the TVs and back, would tell him stories. I assumed at first, I really did, we got along, you know, it was. Hey, it was good old New York Vinny Roo with the fucking accent, and I was the Southern boy that liked fucking cheeseburgers, and we had our gimmicks,
everything was
right?
happy.
And I said, this guy has a world of passion apparently for the business, and it's just a cultural thing. I mean, he's New York and I'm Southern. I'm thinking, when this guy, when he learns something about wrestling, when he understands from the performing and the business side, what you can do and what you can't do and what you should do or shouldn't do and how the people take to the nuances, boy, he's got all these ideas, he'll be great. I didn't realize at the time, which has become apparent in the intervening 15 fucking years, Vince Russo was never a wrestling fan. He always said, I was a wrestling fan, I just didn't like the phony-looking wrestling. The phony-looking wrestling, meaning, I guess, anything besides a bunch of people standing there calling each other their real names and talking about shoot-worked angles. Matches are completely out, because that's phony-looking. Vince was a fan of angles. Vince was a fan of certain personalities. Vince was a fan of highlights. He saw shit that he liked involved in the wrestling presentation, and he retained those. He just had no idea why they were done, how they got there, and how they got out of it, and the fact that usually 6 or 9 months happened in between, right? So it became obvious to me after a while that he didn't want to learn anything. I was trying to teach him about wrestling. He didn't want to learn about wrestling. He wanted to change wrestling to this vision that he had of whatever the fuck it is, where logic has no purpose and nobody knows what the fuck's going on, but it's all a work, except we're really shooting while we're working, because really what we do is fake, but then we try to fucking really double cross each other in our fake shit, and that's real. And so keep tuning in, because we don't know what the fuck we're talking about.
Easy to follow.
By this time in the year, that was my day to go over there and sit in a room with Vince McMahon, the most powerful man in professional wrestling, and listen to this fucking moron who didn't know anything about fucking wrestling rattle off 100 fucking ideas, 2 of which Vince heard some type of genius in and would take them and then give his best announcer in the business and the top 2 stars in the business and his network quality television studio all these instructions based on this fucking moron's ideas. What I was hearing was the other 98 that were making me try to go find a fucking chainsaw and chop this motherfucker's head off, because he would have killed the fucking business. It was like watching an idiot savant just rattle off shit. All I could hear, it was like the fucking kid that can read thoughts in the movies, in the science fiction movie, right when they're in the crowded room and I'm hearing all these stupid fucking ideas and I can't filter them. It just made me want to do this.
Vince Russo said in his book that you had an idea to bring Terry Funk back to WWF in 1997 by having him come out of a box. When you were asked why you had the idea, you said that anyone who comes out of a box is instantly
Over.
over. Is this true?
Well, much like all of the other things that Vince Russo has ever learned or gleaned from the wrestling business, he got the tip of the iceberg on this and took it and ran with it and didn't understand the underlying truth, because as Bill Watts would say, if Vince Russo was walking through a wrestler's locker room, he'd be whistling Stranger in Paradise. What I said was Mick Foley, who I don't remember at that time whether he was still Mankind or whether he was going to become Cactus Jack or whatever the fuck he was going to be, but he was a top guy at the time in the WWF. And I can't remember who he was fucking with. Might have been the New Age Outlaws. I don't know. I, once again, like an Auschwitz survivor, I tend to put my times with Vince Russo in the same room out of my mind, like a bad, sexual abuse case when I was very small or something. So what I said was, he needs a partner. And they were talking about who could it be and what could we do and blah, blah, blah. I said, have him do the old deal. Of course, it wasn't old to Russo, because Russo never paid any attention to wrestling. He was too busy watching his B movies to steal fucking bad scripts that went straight to video to try to redo them in wrestling. Have Mick come out and bring the New Age Outlaws or whoever it was the present. It's the big box. It's the big box. And people, ooh, what's in the box? It's been done in wrestling territories for years and years and years. And when the New Age Outlaws come out and go, what the fuck is this? And we don't trust this. And whatever the fuck happens, bam, out bursts Terry Funk in Madison Square Garden or where it was going to be, busts out of the box, and together he and Mick Foley beat up the New Age Outlaws, and there is Mick Foley and Terry Funk as a tag team. And Russo said, well, why would he come out of the box? I said, you idiot. He comes out of the box because that's the way the skit's done. Did you ask the guys in vaudeville, Abbott and Costello, why did they say Flugel Street and slowly I turn? No, because that's the fucking bit, you fucking idiot. You fucking drive me crazy with your stupid fucking comments. And I said, Vince, you ought to know, anybody that comes out of a box always gets over. And he just couldn't comprehend that. And plus, I was fucking with him at that point because he was showing me his fucking stupidity. It's like you like professional baseball?
I don't.
Okay, what sport do you like?
Football.
Football, what's your favorite play in football?
The Hail Mary.
Okay, the Hail Mary. Okay, what if you're a fucking professional football coach and one of the guys says, let's do a Hail Mary, and the coach says, what's that and why would that work? Vince Russo is the writer of a goddamn major television wrestling program, and he doesn't even know how to bring somebody out of a fucking box because he never paid any attention and blah, blah, blah. And it's, you know, he would see things since he has apparently the ADD and not very good attention skills and comprehension, retention is what I'm trying to say. What he would do is he would see things that stuck with him, and he would remember those, but not the setup or the payoff or the build or whatever. So he would just do them. And then he'd do something else. And then people would be going, why would that happen, followed by that and that? We didn't even remember who was inside of these guys. And they don't know what the fuck. But he doesn't know why you would build the guy coming out of the box. But I don't know. As a double cross his ass. And that's... See, Vince Russo took credit, and let me tell you this: if the finish was my idea, I wouldn't admit it in public because this is a no-win situation. But I know whose idea it wasn't. It wasn't fucking Vince Russo's. Russo's taking credit for it. Well, I explained to him when I said double cross in jest about the Shamrock thing. Russo's eyes got even buggier than normal. He didn't know what a double cross was. As Bill Watts used to say, if he was walking through a men's locker room, he'd be whistling "Stranger in Paradise." Vince Russo does not know anything about professional athletics or how to manipulate or choreograph or simulate same.
Let's talk a little bit about the Montreal screw job, because I was reading some of your interviews or listening to some of your interviews about that. And you're basically the guy that came up with the finish, right?
Yeah.
Russo came up with that ridiculous brawl for all that not only destroyed Steve Williams' career, but cost the WWF between $5 and $10 million in one night, which I actually brought up to him. I said, hey, well, what do you think now, Russo? You fucking cost the company $10 million in one night with your fucking stupid idea. And got everybody hurt because, you know, if as Watts used to say, if Vince Russo was walking through a men's locker room, he'd be whistling "Stranger in Paradise." He's never been in a fight or an athletic contest. He's a piece of fucking shit that blames the boys for his shortcomings. But anyway, he heard of the rise of the Ultimate Fighting Championships and didn't understand it. This was the first time they were on pay-per-view before John McCain fucking fucked them. He didn't understand the whole idea. He didn't understand what it was like to actually be in a real fight since he'd never been in one, which he admits himself. He didn't understand that the guys that were in the WWF were tough, but they were trained and had been training for show, not go. That is a whole lot different, training for actual competition as opposed to training for, at the time, what they were doing, which is pro wrestling. And he didn't understand the whole thing, and he thought that he didn't understand that it was going to create bad feelings in the locker room because not only was it a shoot, but they were giving out real money prizes, and it was going to cause issues, and it was going to cause injuries. He didn't understand any of that, and he didn't want to listen to it when anybody brought all those things up, because it's not like it took a goddamn Gene Dixon or a fucking Nostradamus to see what was going to fucking happen. I just named all the things that was going to fucking happen in 30 seconds, and I named those when I first heard about the idea. And as usual, he was his smug little arrogant, obnoxious fucking self. He was totally oblivious to all this shit. All that stuff happened, and he just laughed it off and continued on his way. When all those guys got hurt, their careers got damaged and or destroyed. When I went up to him after the final, when Doc got knocked out, and I said, well, how happy are you now? You just cost the company $5 million in pay-per-view revenue in one night because this match with Doc and Austin will never happen. And he was dumbstruck. He was completely dumbfounded. Didn't understand what the fuck was going on. But Bart Gunn, we made a new star. No, you just made a goddamn job guy knock out the big new star we were going to make because you presented this guy as a job guy for fucking ever. And just winning this fucking hokey ass shit that nobody believes anyway is not going to do anything for anybody. And the fans didn't believe it was a shoot because the stupid motherfucker had spent goddamn the previous fucking however long he'd been around the business telling everybody that everything that they did was phony, and then he has the guys go out and beat each other up for real and nobody believed it. And they all got hurt. Tell you what, if Buck had stopped with me, Owen wouldn't have been up there. It's nothing Vince Russo, but maybe that's why he found God, because he killed Owen Hart. Fuck you, Vince Russo. Owen Hart would have not been up, one of the best wrestlers on the fucking roster, had done everything. He didn't want to be up there. It was Vince Russo's silly ass idea that a great wrestler like Owen Hart needs something to get over, and gonna do the Blue Blazer because it was funny, because he did it before 10 years ago, so we're gonna do it again because everybody remembers. See, here's the thing with Vince Russo, everybody remembers Chief Jay Strongbow's social security number. If it happened at the Nassau Coliseum in 1974, everybody remembers that. But if it's NWA history from fucking 10 years ago, why, who would ever remember something like that? You fucking moron. But he put Owen in the Blue Blazer outfit and he fucking hung him up there. And Owen didn't want to fucking do it. He didn't want to do the run through. He didn't want to do the whole goddamn thing. He thought it was stupid, but he was trying to be a company guy. And Vince McMahon, I'm sorry, but you tolerated Vince Russo doing shit like that and fucking your company up and then fucking you and then going down and putting WCW out of business. Everybody who tolerates Vince Russo, in my opinion, gets what they deserve.
Bro, I get tweets to these days, you killed Owen Hart. To this day, I get tweets about how I killed Owen Hart.
Well, first of all, let me clarify. I never said Vince Russo killed Owen Hart. He killed Owen Hart. He killed Owen Hart. He killed Owen Hart. I never said Vince Russo. He killed Owen Hart. If I had had to sit in the same room with Vince Russo, nothing was getting done. It was hurting business. If Vince was going to go with this fucking guy, which he was going with his concepts and his ideas, and then filtering and monitoring, then it wasn't good for me to be there. And it wasn't good for my fucking arrest record or his fucking health record for us to be in the same room for a while, because it was really getting, I hated the shit. Mm-hmm. Hated him because now I'd figured out, not only don't he know, but he don't want to learn. This is what he's going to do. He's going to do, if he was unfiltered, he's going to book wrestling exactly like what you have seen from Vince Russo for the past 10 years since WCW closed down. This is what it's going to be. And I possibly would have murdered him before it got that fucking far.
But
So apparently Vince, just to close up, said, okay, no business is getting done and I'm going to go with this fucking guy. So and then I was off, and then I became producer, agent, announcer, international syndication, some fill-in on cable, Superstars, me and Jim Ross, dealing with third-party promoters, scouting talent, blah, 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 anything but anything around creative, because I wanted to gouge his eyeballs out. And with Ed Ferrara, who came in to be the paper carrier, because then it was like, okay, here's the formats. Russo's walking around with both of his hands free so he can do the yo bro thing, and there's Ferrara right behind him with the papers like, yes, Mr. Russo, here's your papers, sir. The year 1997 was not the record year for business. It was the year that set up the record year for business, because without Steve Austin and The Rock and the screw job and the evil Mr. McMahon and the anti-establishment take this job and shove it, basically they would have had no fucking pop. It was not hot-shotted to do that. It wasn't Vince Russo overbooking angles and angles and angles until something stuck. It was the stars aligning and converging in the right manner, with two tremendous fresh new faces on top as talents that were allowed, given the ball and allowed to carry it and allowed to change their shit and do it the way they would have done it. It was the evil antagonist, Mr. McMahon, and the idea that for once people could believe something about wrestling. For the first time in maybe fucking 5 years, they actually believed something was real, because it was. And those were played on by the best announcer in the business and a network quality television production company that could put those packages together and distribute them all over the world. And the one guy in the middle, like the idiot savant, like in Rain Man, rattling off numbers and mathematical equations and throwing shit against the wall, and 98 of them would bounce back and 2 of those shit balls would stick, was Vince fucking Russo. And Vince Russo now, as a result of 1997 happening right underneath him, joins Eric Bischoff as two guys in the wrestling business who have had the most serendipitous career of being in the right place at the right time and being successful for 2 years out of 20. I salute you both. Russo insinuates himself in, and then all of a sudden Russo discovers the one true talent that he has.
Vince Russo discovers his calling in life. Vince Russo's one true talent is to believably lie and say that he's qualified to do something when he's not. Vince Russo then disregards the fact that he had a network quality television production facility making his meaningless jabble sound like it actually meant something. The best announcer in the business, Jim Ross, to explain it, who he tried desperately with every ounce of energy in his body to keep off television, that he was too Southern, that he was afflicted, that he had Bell's palsy, that people didn't want to look at him. And every time Jared walked down the ramp, he'd get a standing ovation from the people who respected what he fucking did because he was good. And they will never respect Vince Russo because he's got buggy whip arms and fucking big fucking eyes and goddamn, he looks like a goof because he is a goof, because he fucking walks out there like he's goddamn King Kong to the Road Warrior music. And he thinks he's over because he goes to Long Island and he's his triumphant return like he's Lou Gehrig at the fucking stadium. And everybody goes, who's this fucking buggy whip-armed motherfucker? He couldn't stand that JR was over because he didn't like Southern people. He didn't like Bell's palsy people. I don't know, maybe he don't like handicapped people. I don't know. He didn't like JR because JR would tell him when he was full of shit. And so would I. And he didn't like me either because I want to do wrestling. Well, goddamn, it's World Wrestling Federation. Why don't we put a little wrestling in there, Vince Russo, every once in a while? What do you want to do? Fucking Holiday on Ice with chimpanzees? As a matter of fact, I'd probably give him his next pay-per-view. So then, he slowly plays to the internet fans. Because, see, Russo, since he probably has a small penis, and since he knows that he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, has to have positive feedback and reinforcement to make his ego grow. So he doesn't want to sell the buildings out. He didn't want to fucking have a great television show. He didn't want to produce a product he can be proud of. Wow, that was a classic match between two excellent athletes or fucking great performers. He wants to do fucking mud wrestling with silicone-titted bimbos because he's sexually frustrated, and he wants the internet fans to think he's great because they're the ones that he can listen to. Because the other fans, the ones that pay all the money for all the tickets, they're cheering the stars. And guess what? He ain't a star. He's not on TV. He's a writer. Maybe he can fix that. Maybe, just maybe. Because the internet people are stroking him enough that the other marks, the ones running the fucking multi-million-dollar company in Atlanta, they don't know the fucking difference. He convinces them that he's responsible for Vince McMahon's success.
Vince Russo and Ed Ferrara fly down to Atlanta while Vince McMahon's in England and meet with Bischoff and meet with people in Atlanta and basically do the same thing that Bischoff did to get the job in WCW, pad their resume, convince these fucking marks at TBS that didn't know anything about wrestling that they served the second course at the Last Supper and that they were the reason why the WWF had taken over and overtaken them. So they end up getting $1 million a year or whatever the fuck. When Vince McMahon lands after a trip to England back at the Newark airport to go to the Meadowlands for TV that night, he gets a phone call from Vince Russo. We're done. We're going to Atlanta. We're going to work for WCW. Thanks, Vince. On the phone. 30 miles from fucking Vince Russo's house. He can't come down and be a man.
I know I'm drawing this out, but fuck these fucking guys. And they fly to Atlanta and make the deal because, see, they're office employees. And one mistake Vince made was counting on some degree of loyalty, honesty, or at least fucking human kindness from guys that he's made a lot of money from. They go to Atlanta, they sign the contracts. They fly back to Connecticut, where they both live now. Vince Russo has a house in Trumbull or whatever the fuck it is. Vince McMahon comes back the following day, straight into the Meadowlands for TV. Meadowlands, Trumbull, Connecticut, 60 miles. Even in New York traffic, I would have done it. Vince Russo didn't have the balls, didn't have the guts, didn't have the decency, didn't have the common courtesy to get his fucking ass in that car and drive to the Meadowlands and walk up to Vince McMahon and say, Vince, they offered me so much fucking money that I couldn't turn them down, and I appreciate it. It's been fun. Here's a hearty handshake. He called him on the fucking phone. Vince McMahon gets a phone call at whatever time of day. Oh, by the way, your head writer is not only not coming to your national television tonight, but he just took a job with your competitor. Fuck you, Vince Russo. You're a goddamn ballless fucking prick. And he was so underappreciated. He wasn't given the credit that he was, that he deserved, that he was responsible for. Nobody recognized him. You know what they're recognizing now? They're recognizing what Vince Russo shit looks like when they didn't have Vince McMahon standing over him saying, you know what? Those 24 ideas are real bullshit, but I'll take this good one. You got a bunch of fucking dancing bears parading around in the goddamn ring, a bunch of women with silicone, a bunch of goddamn club-footed, slap-happy fucking guys that couldn't work their way out of a goddamn paper bag, bag, and he don't know the fucking difference. And he's out there beating Ric Flair up with a baseball bat because he finally got to be a star. Now he don't have to subsist on the internet marks fucking clapping for him. He can have the fucking roar of their dwindling crowds going, oh, that's, yeah, that Russo guy. He's a star now. He beats the wrestlers. He's a fucking prick. He has no respect for the business or the people in it. He made the statement, well, we'll just teach actors to wrestle, because if I can learn to work in the ring, anybody can. There's a goddamn news bulletin I didn't hear about when I heard about World War II and all the other great happenings the last 50 years. When did Vince Russo learn to fucking work? Jesus fucking Christ. I want to puke.
What exactly happened with you leaving a message on his voice machine or something like that?
Oh, that's another good one here, and this proves what a liar he is in addition to all his other fine qualities as a human being. I hope he sues me. As a matter of fact, Vince Russo, if you ever see this, sue my fucking ass and suck my dick while you're at it. But anyway, I was coming here and I made the remark, you know, if I go home without this developmental program working out like I wanted and I don't have a check, I think I'm just going to hospitalize that fucking Russo my last day here, just because I just goddamn want to. Because he's been cutting my nuts off behind my back, just like he did to Jim Ross, just like he did to a lot of people, and he didn't have the fucking guts to say anything there foul. He'd argue with me to my face, but the problem is, I wasn't arguing with him because I didn't like him. I didn't like him at that point. There was a time we could ride together. That is no more. But I was arguing with him because I genuinely felt that it was better for business or for the company or for the talent involved that we not do stupid asinine things with them and make them turn into, you know, buffoons and jokes. So anyway, the answering machine. More people who shall not be named, but who used to be friends with Vince Russo until he moved under cover of darkness out of Connecticut after giving no notice and just fucking leaving and going to the competitor. Well, people he used to talk to every day, people he's supposed to be friends with, now they don't hear from him. They don't hear from his wife, their wives don't hear from his wife, but they're just gone. They vapor. But as the WWF was going to be in Atlanta, maybe Russo thought he was going to run into somebody, maybe he had a sudden flash of humanity or conscience, I doubt that. Whatever, he left a message on one of their voicemails, give me a call. You know, when you're in town or whatever. And that person happened to be riding in the car with me. And that person happened to work for the WWF. And I happened to say to that person, you know, I wish I had that motherfucker's number, because there's some things I didn't never really got a chance to say to him before I left. Well, here's his number. Okay. Here you go. Must have been his cell phone. Because he answered it. It was like 11 o'clock at night. It wasn't 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm driving in the car. Hello? I recognize that voice anywhere. I said, Vince Russo. He said, yeah. Jim Cornette. He said, hey. I said, I just want, and this was after he got sent home the first time. I said, I just want to call you up and congratulate you, you fucking piece of shit, on getting canned, getting your ass fired, getting sent home for being incompetent, you fucking piece of shit. You cut my goddamn nuts off long enough to everybody that you could and try to get me fired long enough. So how does it feel to know that they finally fucking found out that you goddamn don't know what you're fucking doing? Fuck you. And then I said, and if you'd like my fucking home phone number, since I'm on a cell phone, break it up where we can continue this, it's, and I started to give it to him, I realized he'd already hung up. Well, okay, that's his privilege. It's also my privilege, since I still possess that phone number, to call it the next day. Because I still had some things I hadn't said to him. And that day his voicemail picked up that time, and I said, you know, by the way, I'd just like to remind you also that you are the shits, and you're a goddamn piece of shit, you're a liar, I mean, you know, just directed at him. I can't remember what it was, but it was actually one of the better Jim Cornette tirades directed at him, at Vince Russo, at the human slimeball himself. He calls the WWF Human Resources Department that's supposed to handle shit like, you know, don't call each other names. I don't know what the fuck they do. I'm wrestling. I'm not human resources. He told them that I had threatened his children, that I said I wanted to fuck his wife. I'm sorry, I've seen Amy. She's a saint to live with the piece of shit, but I wouldn't, no, I'm not romantically interested. I didn't say anything about his kids. His kids are actually some fucking misbehaving Halloween fucking kids. I'm over at Bruce Pritchard's house one time. He had a little cookout, had some ribs. He said, try my hammock. I said, I sure will. I'm laying in a hammock, it's peaceful under the tree. These little fucking pricks shot me with one of those goddamn water machine guns hooked up to a garden hose. So his kids are unruly kids, but I didn't say anything about his kids. His kids never did anything wrong to me besides shoot me with a water gun. I'll forgive that. His wife's never done anything to me. I was talking to him because he's the piece of shit that's fucked me around.
Actually, Vince Russo wrote me off for money, so.
Well, as,
advertising.
you know, I'm sure he did because he's a goddamn crooked, heinous piece of shit human being. How long
is that list, your ass-kicking list? It's a long list.
No, well, no, I've shortened it up to old people, paraplegics, and midgets these days because I'm getting older and I've had too many injuries.
Have you taken anyone off the list? Has anyone graduated to maybe just the general disdain instead of an ass whip?
I still hate a lot of people. I just don't want to fight them anymore.
Okay. Like Russo hasn't graduated to something else?
No, me and Vinny Rue, we're fine now.
See,
Don't try to
That's what I mean. Hasn't he graduated to a higher
well,
plateau?
When we were in the WWF together, our ideas on what professional wrestling were so far apart that they actually almost went all the way around the world and met on the other side. But now, I follow that not taking it so seriously method anymore.
Alrighty.
And we speak now. Big Rib, Jeff, talking me into fucking coexisting with Vince Russo for 3 fucking years. I told you how it was going to turn out, and it turned out that way. It just took longer than I thought. And also, by the way, Dixie Carter, you employ Vince Russo. About $40 million of your father's money that he dug up out of the ground has been thrown back in a fucking oil well that fucking Vince Russo dug because you're too stupid to fucking figure out that everybody else in the business ain't wrong. You are. Vince Russo's a fucking idiot.
I went to TNA, he was not there yet. They hired him 6 weeks afterwards. And I've told the story before, and then I gave him a notice. I told Jeff, I said, this would get in the way of business. I don't know what the fuck you're thinking, but it would get in the way of business. Don't want to be around him. Obviously, let me finish up, let Abyss give me the black hole slam, injure me, get some heat on your heel. I was figuring at the time, 3 or 4 months later, sometimes somebody would come to their senses, he'd be gone, and I'd go back. Because they had asked me to come to begin with. I didn't call them. Dutch had been calling me for months.
Why'd they ask Vince Russo to come in? Somebody saw
I don't
value in
fucking
him.
know, Jeff. That's
Jeff
the thing.
Jarrett has a
blind spot. He found out what good it did him in the end, and I love you, Jeff, to this day, except you not only hired Vince Russo to be involved in your company and chose his advice over your father's, but you also, in the process, made me have to sit and coexist with him for 3 years, and I regret that to this day. Somehow I figured, okay, maybe if I work as hard as I can somehow counterbalance the detriment that Russo's going to be to the business by doing something good for TNA, and maybe then if I do real good and he does what he normally does, then it can balance out where it'll at least be the same as it was. Tried that for a while. That obviously wasn't working because you can't overcome that level of badness, no matter who you are. The boys hated most of the time, when you would come up and present what he wanted to do because it didn't make any sense. And then they would say, well, this doesn't make any sense. And I would say, I can't argue with you, so let's figure out some way to get to the same place we need to get to and take a different road. And then I'd have to go back to Jeff. And he'd say, okay, do that. Well, now Jeff was gone. He calls me up on the phone, says, take care of the business. Don't let him go too far. Keep the boys in line, because then they fired Dutch, who was the only other person that the boys would listen to. So out of the duty that I felt to the company, the team was in need, I actually go to Vince Russo for the first time. I mean, we'd said hello in production meetings for a couple of years. Hey, Vince, hey, man, blah, blah, blah. Maybe even the, meaningless handshake. But we'd never actually had a substantive conversation about anything that didn't relate to what we were doing on the show that day. And I went to him, I said, look, we know we've had the history and we have no similar thoughts about professional wrestling whatsoever, but I will help you. The team is in need. Our fearless leader is at home. The boys, it could be anarchy. I will help you. We shook hands, right? Let's put our shit aside. And then the following taping was the whole kerfluffle with the Sting and Hernandez match and Eric Young and Russo refused to have anything to do with anything physical. He wouldn't agent the matches. He wouldn't agent the angles. He would just agent the interviews because that was his, verbal effluvia spewing forth. But he said, oh, but the matches, the physical stuff, that's up to you guys. Then why are you writing a fucking wrestling show, idiot? If you don't want to have, don't know anything, you're admitting you don't know anything about the matches and don't have anything to do with the matches and the finishes, why are you writing the show?
But that's a token of respect in a way, right?
No, it's a token of I'm admitting I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I shouldn't be writing a wrestling show if you don't know anything about the matches and the finishes and can't tell the guys how to do this shit.
Hey, Dixie.
Hey.
Long time no see. I feel like we got to put all that water under the bridge because I'm here tonight not to rehash any old problems, but I've been appointed by the people at Kayfabe Commentaries to ask a question of you that's been asked by various people in various ways. People inside the wrestling profession and outside. Whether it be fans, whether it be office staff, whether it be wrestlers, talent, rookies or veterans, hundreds, if not thousands of people have asked some variation of this same question, Dixie, but it boils down to basically 3 modes of questioning. I will give them to you now. And remember, I've been appointed to do this.
By himself.
Yeah, we twisted your
Why
arms.
do you employ Vince Russo? Why have you entrusted the creative direction of your company to Vince Russo for so long? And why does Vince Russo have a job in the professional wrestling industry? Hundreds, if not thousands of people inside and outside the business want to know the answer. So, personal feelings aside, Dixie, I've been appointed on their behalf to ask that question. I'd like now to give you the floor to answer it. Take as much time as you wish, give as much detail as you want. But answer the question, Dixie, like your company depends on it, because unfortunately, it does.
Thank you, Jim. So good to see you. I've missed
You've
you
heard of Jim Cornette, right?
tremendously, once or twice, yeah. Vince Russo, he is, you guys, I'm sure, have heard some of those Fire Russo chants, that we've had in arenas through the years. There is a Fire Russo chant in my arena again. I will fire somebody else.
People have a problem when I call them up on a phone and cuss them out. And now, I'm not a tough guy. I'm not going to whip most any professional wrestler. Maybe if Cowboy Lang was still around, we might be able to have a go.
Destiny. Flawless victory. Choose your destiny. Flawless victory.
I could whip Vince Russo, but he's never been in a fight in his life. But I'm not saying I'm a tough guy, but I will tell you what I think. If I believe that I've treated you fairly, or I've never done anything to you and you fucking knock me, or if you lie about me and something that I haven't done, there's plenty of shit that I have done to fucking go ahead and pick from. You don't have to make shit up. The TNA put the, which I'll talk about in just one second, TNA put the story out trying to make themselves baby faces after they released me because I was making Vince Russo look bad by pointing out how shitty his stuff was. They put out a story I acted unprofessionally towards Russo. As I told the people in New York City when I debuted for Ring of Honor, if I had yelled and screamed at Vince Russo, if I had called Vince Russo names, if I had lunged for Vince Russo's neck, not only would I be telling you word for word, verbatim, exactly what I said, but I would hopefully have video from some bystander as well to share with you, and I would put it up on my website. It didn't happen. They were trying to make themselves babyface. And of course, Vince Russo, whenever I'm let go from a situation, is always 1,000 miles away from me because he doesn't have the balls to confront me about it. Now, having said that, last thing I'm going to say, the TNA situation with the legal letter came down to this. To be quite honest, I'd always, as I said in the letter, I'd always got along with Terry Taylor, and he had actually sent me an email saying, Jim, I've always been your friend. I like you, I really do. I'm sure we'll work together again someday, your friend Terry Taylor. And that was last October, the last thing he ever emailed to me. And since then, people had told me, Terry Taylor's a stooge. He's a backstabber. He's a liar. He talks out of both sides of his neck. He was in on it with Russo. They were trying to take over the company, to take over the direction of the company, and it would have succeeded, except then a month later they hired Bischoff and Russo to come in, or Bischoff and Hogan to come in, and they take over from Russo and Taylor, trying to take over from Jeff, and a whole bunch of backstabbers. But anyway, so I wrote Terry Taylor a simple little email doing 2 things. Putting over him and all the rest of the people in the company that I liked, many of them by name, and saying about Vince Russo what I've always wanted to have the opportunity to say to Vince Russo's face, not even on the phone, in person, because he's always been so gutless he makes himself scarce whenever there comes a time where it's got to be a him or me type of thing. So I figure one of 3 things are going to happen. Terry's either going to tell all these fine folks that I like and had fun working with that I don't take it personally, that I like them, but I will knock TNA because they've ruined their chances of being a competition to Vince McMahon. Or he can delete that email, or he can run that email right over to his buddy, Vince Russo. Guess who flunked the stooge test?
The email wasn't intercepted by internet technology people or whatever, the IT people, because number one, I've been to the TNA offices. These people are lucky to be able to get their own emails, right? They got no staff. Secondly, the letter that I got sent the copy of was not the email that I sent to Terry Taylor. It was the email that Terry Taylor sent to Vince Russo in the time and date that he sent it to him to his personal email address. So he forwarded it, shot it right over, just like the fucking spineless, dickless stooge that Terry has become. But anyway, so the only reason that this became public knowledge, because once I sent the email, you know, I was going to forget about it because I never heard back. But a month later, I figured just delete, boom, and that's fine, moving on. A month later, up the hill at Castle Cornette comes the mailman. Now, if they don't leave the stuff in the box, if they come up the hill, they got to get a signature. You know it's some important shit, right? A letter from a Beverly Hills law firm saying that not only have I committed terroristic threats, now what I did was I said all the things that I wanted to say to Vince Russo's face in this letter to Terry Taylor. One of the things was, I said, if I could figure out a way to murder him without going to prison, I would do it. And that's true, I would. But I would also, if I could figure out a way to fuck Pamela Anderson every day, I'd do that too, and I'm having no luck on that one either. So I think we're safe here. And I said he was an abominable prick, and I said that he had ruined the chances of TNA to be competitive with the WWE, and he'd ruined guys' lives and careers with his shitty booking, and he'd cost me money, and that I hated the thought of him, and I wake up from dreams where I'm in the act of murdering him. All these things are true, but at the same time, none of them are illegal. And this lawyer accused me of making these terroristic threats. Like I'm Osama bin Cornette or something. Like I'm the Zodiac Killer. I'm circling Vince Russo's house with my SUV. I wouldn't circle his house. I'd go up and knock on his fucking door, but I don't know where he lives. And he's kept that one a well-guarded secret. I know it's somewhere in Colorado, and that's too far to drive. But I understand he is moving to Nashville. But anyway, this letter from his lawyer goes on to state, and let me know if I'm running out of tape here, but this letter from his lawyer goes on to state that in addition to the fact they've reported me to the federal and state authorities, I got news for you. They've been aware of me for quite some time now. You didn't tell them anything they didn't already know. But in addition to that, not only do they give my information to all these people, if anything happens to Vince Russo, so what I'm doing now is I'm encouraging everybody out there, if you see him walking across the street, don't run over him. They'll come and hassle me. At least let me know so I can get an alibi or something. Because the whole thing's a fucking joke. But they also said you've revealed confidential information. And by your TNA talent contract, you're bound to confidentiality. It was an email sent to the guy that signed my TNA contract. Terry Taylor's the head of talent relations. What am I telling him he don't know? I probably could, but there was nothing in that email that he didn't know. So they said basically, we hold you to your confidence. I'll show you confidentiality, motherfucker. Here's the fucking problem. The fucking problem is I've known some of you people for 30 years, and you didn't realize that if I get a letter from a lawyer telling me because I hate Vince Russo, I need to shut the fuck up, I checked out billboard rates, but I figured the people couldn't read the fine print that far up, so I put it on my website, and I'll do the same thing because I want people to know what Vince Russo has done to the wrestling that they enjoy, that we perform, and that everybody has to suffer for. That's what I wanted everybody to know, and so they want to send me a lawyer's letter and tell me to shut up. Well, number one, I didn't do anything wrong. I ain't gonna kill a fucking guy. I will punch him in the nose if I ever see him, but I don't think that'll kill him. Boy, that would be a pay-per-view fight, wouldn't it? Me and Vince Russo? Everybody wants to know. Let's see what would happen. But anyway, yeah, work on that. But anyway.
Vince Russo recently, this is another thing. Vince Russo recently gets on the fucking internet. And he's mad because somebody actually called him on his shit and said, by the way, one of those 2-hour TNA Impact shows only had 16 minutes of fucking wrestling in a 2-hour show. So he gets on he's promoting a book. I wasn't aware Vince Russo had ever read a book. I'm surprised he's written one. But he's promoting his fucking book, and he says, I have so many things I want to do with my life. I want to make my father laugh. I want to play baseball with my kids. I want to blah, 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 blah. I can't imagine how anybody could have such a miserable life that they would sit there with a stopwatch and time how many minutes of fake wrestling are in a fake wrestling show. That's an exact quote from Vince Russo. Puts this on the internet. Of course, immediately the shitstorm starts. And I guess people in the company, I know Taz, thank you Taz, a lot of people in the company, outside the company, fans, people in the business. So the very next week, he's back on his Twitter or his internet or whatever the fuck he is with this heartfelt apology about how he didn't realize what he was saying. He's just a New Yorker. He shot his mouth off. And it's not that he doesn't like wrestling, it's just that he doesn't like fake kind of wrestling. That's why he likes to try to write all his shows to be real. And he doesn't like the word booker. He's a TV writer. He hates the word booker. See, we couldn't be any more opposite. We are diametrically opposed. We are the bizarro component of each other. He's a northerner, I'm a southerner. He wants to be a writer, I wanted to be a booker. He's a Christian, I'm an atheist. He hates wrestling, I love wrestling. If one of us was a black lesbian nun, we'd have it all fucking covered. But anyway, I don't know what I'm more astonished by. That Vince Russo was completely, utterly gobsmacked to hear that what he wrote was offensive to everybody that's ever made a dime in the wrestling business, or everybody that's ever considered themselves a wrestling fan, or whether I'm more astonished that he genuinely, delusionally, literally believes that he has once in his life written a wrestling show that anybody could possibly believe was real. I burst into flames whenever I hear things that he says, whenever I hear his voice, whenever I look at him. It's like a sudden itching powder thrown up my fucking crotch, because he is so utterly disrespectful and unsuited and unqualified, and has been completely unsuccessful at this business, but it's always everybody else's fault. He wrote recently, well, the boys got complacent for a while there, but now that the new regime is in and some of the new talent's in, maybe they'll step up their game. Why don't you step up your fucking booking, fucking genius? And he says, well, I'm a TV writer. I'm paid to produce ratings. You're paid to produce ratings. When have you produced any ratings? He tries to take credit for Steve Austin and The Rock. But if something doesn't work out, it was somebody else's fault. Standards and practices in fucking TBS. Or blah, 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 blah. I could go on endlessly. It's just there's so much material. But I just wanted to get that in there. Once again, fuck you.
He made the statement that the wrestling business has, I'm paraphrasing here because I can't stand to memorize his words. The wrestling business has punished me and been harder on me, and I've done more of the wrestling business. I'm just so tired of writing fake wrestling scripts for wrestlers that don't appreciate what I've tried to do for them. Well, let me tell you something, you sorry sack of Brooklyn shit. One of the reasons why nobody in this business respects you, why people in your own company, when I would ask them and grill them, how does he keep a job? What does anybody see? They don't have a fucking clue. They roll their eyes behind your back in the production meetings. They laugh at you. The wrestlers get actively angry at the shit that you ask them to perform that's completely impossible. And you are a joke to veterans and rookies alike, to office staff and wrestlers. And the fans' emails that I've gotten, Vince, call you names that I've never even begun to attempt to come up with. Part of the reason is because you insist on talking about the fake wrestling business. And it comes as a surprise to you that that's a slap in the face to anybody that's ever worked in this profession, anybody that's ever enjoyed watching it, or anybody that's ever spent any time or effort involved in putting a show on or going to see a show. You disrespect them. You slap it in the face. You act like only you and your brilliance can make this better. And in the process, you make wrestlers do silly, stupid things that hampers their ability to get over and shortens their careers, or you give them stupid gimmicks or meaningless stipulations to kill their programs, or you take away their television time altogether for the sake of seeing your brilliantly scripted comedy come to life in backstage antics, instead of giving the wrestlers an opportunity to do what they do in the ring, which is go out and be athletes. You jock-sniffing son of a bitch, something that you've never been, and I admit I've never been. Instead of being athletes and getting themselves over, if it ain't about your writing, Vince, then you don't like it. And that's why you don't like wrestling. And that's why we don't like you. And that's why we wish you would all piss up a fucking rope.
I told Dutch Mantell to put this in his book. I don't know if he did or not, because Dutch, you haven't sent me the free one yet.
Cornette's last statement to me regarding Vince Russo was this, and this is the truth. I hope to one day outlive Russo, and if it takes me until I'm 98 years old, I want to be able to visit his grave and piss on his gravesite. Jimmy was never one to hold back his feelings.
I will live. I'm making it a point. As a matter of fact, that's one of the reasons why I'm on my low-carb diet and trying to stay away from sugar, etc., because I want to live to stand over and piss upon Vince Russo's grave. For the fans that he's deprived of seeing fucking great wrestling, for the fucking wrestlers whose careers he's shortened, for the fucking people that make their living in the wrestling business who have had elevated blood pressure or fucking lowered fucking income because of his fucking foolishness. Vince, one of these days, I'm making it a mission now in my life. You're going to go before me if I have to make it to 93 just so I can stand there and take a whiz on your fucking headstone, pal. Fuck you.
I haven't lost it. I haven't gone off the deep end. I have this one thing. I have this burning hatred of Vince Russo, everything he's done to the wrestling business, everything he's done to the people in the wrestling business, everything he's done to the people who enjoy the wrestling business, and everything that comes out of his mouth is the direct opposite antithesis of anything that I believe in my heart and mind should happen. Otherwise than that, I'm a calm, rational guy. But I just wanted to give the explanation so everybody wouldn't think, oh, Cornette's going to run off and kill people. I'm unfailingly polite, especially to strangers, because I don't like confrontation, but if I detect rudeness or stupidity or a combination of the two, I will say something to you because I have no patience. If I have been nice to you or professional to you or not bothered you in any way and you begin to bother me, then we got a fucking issue and then I yell at you. And if I happen to hate you more than I can possibly describe because you have ruined a business that so many people have sacrificed their lives and their blood and their sweat and their efforts and their tears for, if I happen to hate you because you stand in opposition to all of that, Vince Russo, I will tell you. I will tell everybody until the end of time. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I really don't. I said what I thought about this fucking guy. I told people what kind of fucking asshole he is. He's a shit stain on life. I explained it. I broke it down. Thought that was going to be the end of it. Well, of course, because he's such a fucking attention whore. He's like the kid that fucking pulls his pants down and shakes his wee-wee at the other kids on the playground because he wants people to look at him. He couldn't get the thrust of my meaning. And first he put out a challenge. Oh, meet me face to face on Skype, right? On my podcast. Then he mitigated that. Don't have to be on my podcast. It'd be on your podcast or anybody else's podcast. And then he actually got some of the eggs with 4 followers that have tweeted 12 times. I think it's, like I said, it's either, maybe it's Disco Inferno since he's not employed these days. He's got plenty of free time. Or I understand now there's a little fucking water carrier named Jeff Lane that actually writes all of Russo's shit on his website because everybody knows Russo can't read, write, or spell. He can read, he just refuses to. He's been on record as saying he doesn't read, hates to read, a writer that hates to read. But he can't write and he can't spell, so he's got this fucking stooge named Jeff Lane that you know, he tickles his balls every once in a while when Russo wants him to, and he writes all the stuff for him. And he's another one of these guys that Russo takes advantage of because he's desperate to be fucking around who he thinks are important people. So anyway, he tried the challenge to get me on the podcast face to face. Like that would somehow solve anything. Like we could talk it out. Like this is a burning hatred that I want to murder this motherfucker. And there's been fucking lawyers brought into this before, and somehow he thinks that we could talk it out on a podcast. He just wants attention. That's all he wants. So then he even made a challenge, and listen to this. I don't listen to this stuff because I can't stand to hear that fucking voice. I have nightmares about it. But people obviously want to tell me about it. But the one clip that I did listen to for like a minute and a half, Russo goes on the challenge now. Well, let's do it for charity. And he actually couldn't think of the name of the Cauliflower Alley Club. He actually kept stammering, you know, that organization that helped old wrestlers. They help old wrestlers, and it's called. Then he finally muddled out Collie, as in Lassie the Cauliflower Alley Club. All the proceeds from our big debate on some podcast, whether it be mine or his or some neutral podcast, would go to the Cauliflower Alley. Like, what proceeds would that be, you numbnut sack of snake feces, you gum-bumping asshole? My podcast makes just the same amount of money regardless of who's on it or who's not on it. I don't know where the fuck, but this was a desperate attempt by him to be a babyface, like I'm turning down the opportunity. I've been a Cauliflower Alley Club member since the 80s. He couldn't even think of its fucking name.
because that's how much respect he has for the wrestling business and the people in it. None. But the moral to this story, Vince Russo, you obnoxious, overbearing piece of fucking shit, you attention whore, you have sent emails to everybody I know that we both know, including Sean Oliver. Sean Oliver writes me and says, I know there's not been enough money printed, but I just want to tell you that Russo's writing me saying, please, you've got to talk Cornette into doing something with me. It can benefit all of us in capitals, because in capitals is the way that he really emphasizes shit. I just want to tell you, Vince Russo, that I will never do anything with you. I will never work with you. I will never have any cooperation with you. I won't speak to you on the fucking phone. I won't speak to you on fucking Skype. I won't speak to you in person because I don't want to pay a goddamn attorney or potentially go to prison for what I might do when I black out and do what I've always wanted to do to you, and all of your attention getting and all of your bullshit and all your fucking podcasts with your stooges like this Jeff Lane character and this Disco Inferno suck up that likes to blow you because you're the only one that's given him a job in the last fucking 20 years. All these other fucking people, I don't care what they think. I don't care what people like you think, because I don't want people that like you to like me. I don't make any money off this. I turn down money to work with you. And what's more, I spend money. I will spend money to cost you money. It is my hobby and my life's work to make sure that you don't make another dime in this fucking business, and any penny that I can prevent you from fucking making, I will consider $1 million gift to me. But I just want to leave you with this, you fucking moron. You think that you're safe because I said that I wouldn't go to prison for you. Well, I can change my fucking mind. So I'm just telling you, you fucking whiny little cunt, if I will try to rip the throat out of some cab driver that I've never seen before, imagine what I would do to you. So the only way that I will meet you or cooperate with you in anything is if you want to set up a time and a place where just the two of us, with no cameras, no witnesses, no audio, no video, just you and me can be there, and we can work things out amongst ourselves. And if you want to sign a release ahead of time that neither side, me included, is going to call the fucking cops or hire a lawyer, I'll pay any price to be there. But that won't happen because you're a gutless, dickless fucking coward. I'm surprised your wife will even fuck you with that microscopic dick of yours, you piece of shit. And if I were you, I would have goddamn DNA tests done on your kids, because I refuse to believe that you could get hard enough to penetrate her, to shoot even a lick of fucking sperm into her to the point where you could have fucking children. So I have a feeling that those are probably the mailman's or maybe even the milkman's. Now, can you understand that? Did I make that plain enough for you in English that you can understand, you New York cocksucker? I hate you. I want you to die. And the only way that I will meet you is someplace just the two of us all alone, with an assurance that neither side will call the cops or the lawyers after the thing is over with. When you can come up with that fucking deal for me, son, then you get a hold of me. The rest of it, you keep running your fucking dick liquor, because nobody believes it, because everybody, thanks to me and a few other people who have brought this to light, knows that you're nothing but a piece of shit, and that's all you'll ever be. So I hope I have clarified, for the sake of people who are listening, this little fucking disagreement that we seem to have had over who's going to do what for what charity and how much. And by the way, if you would agree to meet me like that, I'll give $5,000 to the charity of your choice. And I might have to pay for your funeral too, because I'd like nothing better. I would get the biggest raging hard-on in the world if I took a baseball bat and caved your skull in where your brain splattered farther than a goddamn hand grenade blowing up in the middle of a Jell-O factory, you fucking asshole. So fuck you, fuck your family, fuck everybody else that has anything to do with you, and fuck anybody that looks like you.
Jimmy was never one to hold back his feelings.